And I remember reading that speech and the room was completely quiet. And the president of SANTACO stood in that room and he said, whoever that is, I'm going to sit down with her and she's going to become the first spokesperson of SANTACO. Don't do it because you want to get into an industry that's male dominated. Go into it because you love it. It's the same government that's supposed to be issuing these operating licenses. And they've got a backlog and they haven't been releasing them. That's concerning. We went to taxi ranks and we're giving people roses. And people were saying, this is different.
Hi, fellow Africans. Welcome to another episode of Creating a Better Africa. I'm super excited to host and finally see her in person. My beautiful sister. She's a spokesperson of SANTACO. Actually, she's the first woman to ever do it, guys. Like, literally the first. I love it. The first, she broke the record, and she's gonna say it much. She's gonna tell us. You know, her name is Rebecca Phala. Hi, sis.
Hi, sis.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad we're not formal because I was just thinking to myself, you know, often when people get into professional mode,
Sure.
they get tempted to want to be like,
Yeah.
oh, formal, hi, how are you doing? So I'm glad that we're like,
Yeah.
as we always are. So I love it. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I didn't struggle with such a big person. I didn't struggle to get her the show. Wow. Thank you so much for your time.
It's always a pleasure. You know, I can do anything for you. So, yeah.
Guys, you heard that? Sweet. So I denied my audience was like full info because I
Yeah.
wanted you to just say it. It's always nice coming from the horse's mouth, guys.
Yeah.
So please share your upbringing with us.
Sure. Born Mmatšhikhidi Rebecca Phala to the parents Raisibe Annette Phala and Masilu Andreas Phala, my father, who is now departed in 1994. It's been a bit of a while. I'm the same age as South Africa's democracy. I know. And born to a number of siblings. So I'm the last born, my mother's firstborn. And I often speak quite fondly about them because we're as close as they come.
Sure.
So she started with a boy, my brother, Franz Phala, and then followed by my sister, Johanna Phala, and then there was my sister, Lydia Phala, and then Maureen, and then myself. Grew up in the humble village of Masiala Mabulo in Limpopo province. Very humble, beautiful village, always misty, mountainous, and often cold.
Yeah.
I've found oftentimes now that when you move between provinces, people always ask, why does it look like you never wear warm clothing? And I say to them, you don't know how much of a breeze it is for me to be anywhere other than my village because I grew up in such a cold village. But humble beginnings, raised by a village more than anything.
Sure.
You would know that back in the day, our parents had to go and find ways to essentially fend for our families.
Yeah.
So I was raised by a massive community. There was an aunt of ours, Mamrolo Winnie, who raised that for a certain period of time. And then after that, I moved to Tabachone to also be raised by my paternal grandfather and my grandmother, his wife, not so much my father's mother. And then came back to be raised by my siblings. So my siblings are more parents to me than they are siblings. Hence, I speak so fondly about them and how they've been a part of my life. But that's essentially my story. Started primary at a primary school called Mahubate. It's been closed now. It breaks my heart. Because of the reality of migration, when people move from one province to other, the numbers of people reduce and the school had to be closed. And then I did my high school at Marubatota High School.
I went to Mahoka, by the way.
Did you?
Yes.
So I now see why.
Why we
you know,
click,
I went, and you know the sisterhood is massive in boarding school.
Yeah.
And then I went to pursue my higher education at the University of Limpopo. But that's essentially my story.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, you studied political sciences,
Yes.
right? So can you talk more about that? Like going into media from that?
So I actually wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to be a lawyer. In grade 12, when we would do orals, because I did Afrikaans, and there was a time when we had to do like a school play, if you will.
Sure.
And I from the onset knew that I wanted to play the character of a lawyer. But funny enough, there were about 3 of us in the class who were very strong in believing that we want to be lawyers. And so another person had to take that. So I ended up being a radio presenter.
Sure.
And then passed matric, and I was on a waiting list for the longest time to study LLB.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I couldn't. We were just too many. And I think too many of us had done really well in our matric.
Yeah.
And so the next option was to go and do political studies, because my father, though I would have wanted to do media studies, he said, I just think you're very talented.
I think you told me this. I think
Yes,
you shared before.
I did.
Yeah.
He was like, no, I don't think you need to study media. And so
Sure.
that's how I studied politics. But look, I went on to venture into a career that really relied a lot on that political science degree, because I ventured into current affairs.
Yes.
So it has tied in beautifully. I mean, even now where I am with the taxi industry, a lot of people don't know it. It is heavily political. And so the training that I had, I mean, one of the modules we did was philosophy, which I think harnessed my critical thinking skills.
Sure.
And it is required quite a lot, because you deal with different characters who have got different ideological beliefs. And so you've got to always be very flexible and understand how to maneuver around that.
Sure.
Sociology is one other module that trains you to understand people, to understand that people are different because they've been conditioned in very varied ways. So it was the perfect foundation that I've needed. I am now pursuing a qualification in public relations. Because I've had to realize that, girl, you're going to have to add on to that, you know, because God has essentially said, no, the journey we've chosen is actually this one.
Yes, yes.
So we have to make sure that the paper aligns with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to ask about your academic background influencing your career.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's really doing the most, eh?
Oh, it
Yeah.
is. It is. I remember when I started on radio, they asked me, Mr. BK Matewe at Energy FM, the day that he met, and he asked me, what are you studying? And I told him, and he said, that's interesting. Would you want to venture into current affairs with the understanding you have of politics? And I wasn't debating at the time. So current affairs, hot news has always been my thing. So it has made it seamless. I think that it has given me an ability to have depth in the delivery of my work, even now, you know. So it has been, the like I've said, the perfect foundation, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're living in your purpose, and I feel like everything that you're doing and how it transpires, it leads you to speaking.
Yeah, always.
I remember you posted a status like, I noticed to
It's like, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a sister of mine recently, Ayanda, and I was saying to her, for the longest time, I struggled with the concept of passion and purpose, to say, so what is your passion and what is your purpose? And she put it beautifully. She said, a purpose is what you're ordained to do.
Sure.
So you can come onto this earth, and because you consume a number of things, then you get tempted to believe that you might like something, maybe because you are influenced by what you've been consuming.
Yeah.
If things were going our way, I would probably be like an advocate by now.
Yeah,
Do you know,
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
still be talking. But I mean, when you look at the trajectory of my life to where I am now, you realize that it's not always as clear cut as you would want it to be.
Sure.
And then she said to me, because then she started helping me decipher what my purpose is. And she said, but what is it that you do with ease? And I said, I tend to explain things quite easy. And I remember my grandmother used to say to me, you should have been a teacher, because you're quite curious and you have a way with words and explaining things. So I think my purpose, I now understand it to be one of making things make sense for others. And that's why even when I did a radio show and when I worked on a newspaper, and even now in my role as spokesperson, I just find that there's incredible clarity whenever I'm called in to explain things and or speak about things. Yeah. So I think I now understand it to be that, to say, I've now been ordained to oversee clarity, if you will. So yeah, but it hasn't been an easy one to understand. Purpose is incredible.
Sure.
It's a big responsibility that God entrusts on on one.
Yeah.
For instance, yours, I think, is to find truths and to discover a lot and then expose that to others.
I believe
Because you're quite very curious. You're very curious. So yeah, that's my understanding of
So
purpose.
can you share a moment where you felt most aligned, like in your purpose?
Now, I think the moment is now.
Sure.
I'm living in it. I think I started living in it from the 13th of December 2022 when we were in Durban and I was reading the speech of the chairperson of SANTACO in Ekurhuleni, who was my boss at the time, and the president of SANTACO was in the crowd. And I remember reading that speech and the room was completely quiet.
Sure.
And immediately after that, they all stood to clap hands for the reading and not so much the contents because, I mean, you would understand.
Yeah.
And the president of SANTACO stood in that room and he said, whoever that is, I'm going to sit down with her and she's going to become the first spokesperson of SANTACO. And it was literally from that moment. Because it changed everything. I mean, when I started in radio, my thing was, okay, I'm going to move from this urban station and maybe go to like a commercial, ultimately go to like talk radio, television, news, broadcasting, talk show type of thing. And then God was like, no, that's not the plan. We're taking
better.
it like we've got, you know. So I think from that day to today, I've just been feeling incredibly aligned. Yeah.
So the transition from media to one might be curious, like I am.
Yeah.
The transition from media to becoming the spokesperson in
Yeah.
SANTACO. Like, please talk about that.
Seamless, I must say. I think that the media space, especially radio, sufficiently prepared me for my role, especially at community level. Because remember, at a community station, when I got there, I was reading English news, and then soon enough, there would always be protests at the University of Limpopo, and I was still a student. And so they would say to me, once you're done reading the 6 o'clock news, rush to campus and then report.
Sure.
So then I started doing field reporting. And then soon enough, then I was given the talk show, which I ended up producing content for, hosting, and then I was news editor. So by the time I left, I understood the ecosystem of news in broadcasting, if you will. And then I get an opportunity to then become an investigative journalist for a newspaper in Polokwane. And I think that just harnesses it because you get to be compelled to, one, think on your feet, and secondly, know how to oversee, but also know when to submit to authority. Because when you work in a community station, sometimes you have to pitch a story and you have to sub-edit the story yourself, and then it needs to go on air and sound like it's something possible. I find that it ties in beautifully with my current role because you would know the taxi industry is a fascinating industry. The number of issues we tackle on a daily can move from helping a person determine the price of a trip from point A to B to you responding to the biggest crisis, you know, of people feeling like they've been violated. So the transition has been seamless because I think that the hard media platforms really prepared me for it. But also remember, for a short stint after I left Limpopo to go to Johannesburg, I then worked in corporate communication for the company that was owned by the taxi industry. But it was for a very brief moment. But even then, I think I was armed, you know, with knowledge of now understanding that you can be creative, but there's also protocol that has to be followed. So it's been very seamless. I'm having, look, it's not the easiest job you can imagine. You know how busy it gets. But I find that there's never been a moment where I was completely clueless and didn't know what to do. Yeah.
Wow. In as much as everything, we'd say everything was working together for your good, like it was leading you to that. So I just wanna know the experience, like how did your experience prepare you for this role? Like your experience in media.
Sure. So you know in media, the whole concept of breaking news, when by the time a journalist or a platform comes to the fore and it disseminates information and they say breaking news, the amount of chaos that would have gone behind the scenes, stuff for blockbuster movies, because there's you need to authenticate that how true is a story. because we're now in an age where misinformation and fake news is on the rise.
Yeah.
And also remember, it's a competition. It's a question of who breaks the story first.
Sure.
I find that a principle such as that one works perfectly with crisis communication that I now do. And I mean, in the taxi industry, you remember in my first year as spokesperson, we had the biggest challenge in Cape Town where taxis were being impounded. And there was a lot of panic. And we take this trip to go down to Cape Town. When we arrive, we find the leadership having converged community members, and they're telling them we're going to stop taxi operations. It's like 12 o'clock midday. People are at work and they need to travel back home. The minute that story goes out, everyone is in panic. When you communicate at that point, you have to be as calm as can be, even with the mounting calls that you're getting from literally everywhere.
Yeah.
But I found that because of the reality of what I would have dealt with in media, it's just a question of staying calm, but understanding that the urgency that is required is incredible.
Yeah.
You have to be able to think on your feet. That philosophy issue that I spoke of earlier from the training in varsity comes in quite handy. But also the skill of knowing how to work with people.
Sure.
And it comes a lot from media, because remember, in media, you've got producers, you've got station managers who are also listening, programs managers who are always listening.
You needed the experience.
So I did.
Yeah.
And it's come in quite handy, I must say. Yeah.
So we all know you're in a male-dominated industry. Like, how is it?
You know, the concept of this whole saying of rose amongst the thorns?
Yes.
I think I see a reality of that.
Sure.
Although I think that the thorns that I deal with, especially at a higher level, their sharp edges have lost the sharpness. So what I mean is, every single time, because just about every day when I go into meetings, I'm literally always the only woman. I'll never hold my handbag. And
Noise.
no, my handbag, my laptop bag, everything. They make sure that I am as well treated as can be. And it's the most beautiful experience. But I find that because the industry has for the longest time been so male dominated, that they're very open to the idea of hearing from somebody that they wouldn't have listened to 10 years ago. So that makes my life and my job so lovely to experience. It's a massive thrill for me. They are open to the idea of these sort of youthful ways of doing things. I remember when we first spoke about opening a TikTok account, they were like, why? What do we have to do with that? But now they are appreciating the instant nature of getting feedback. And some of the many other methods that we've also employed in terms of just ensuring that there's continued communication. So, but notwithstanding that it's not as rosy as I make it to sound to be.
Sure.
The reality of the matter is there will generally always be a reality of there being people who are just used to doing things in a particular way. But I think that what I draw a lot of inspiration from is the reality of them seeming to be open to the idea of learning. Sure. That for me is the biggest thrill. So it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, when you are in a room with men, there's commentary sometimes that's uncomfortable. We were recently at a taxi rank, in fact, and there was somebody who is quite senior in the ranking facility.
Yeah.
Who made a comment about a dress code of a colleague, and it was very uncomfortable. But I think because I know that there is this openness to learn, and also because of the time that we're in, people understand that there's the concept of wokeness and things of that. And we addressed it, and he was very apologetic. But I appreciated that he understands there are some biases that he will have to work through because of the changing time that we're in. So it's not easy. It's a mammoth task, but I'm just appreciating that they are not holding back. I think for the fact that they agreed to have a woman, young as I am, to speak for them goes a long way.
Do you always feel sufficient enough though?
Never. Oh, you see the concept of the imposter syndrome. Never.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I've got a sister, Sis Lucy Mache. She gifted me this dress, by the way.
Oh, and it's so beautiful.
It is. Thank you.
Classy.
She has, especially when I started, she kept me in check with the imposter, because I would always say to her, but what do I have to say? What do I know?
Yeah.
Even though I know quite enough. But it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. I mean, the number of platforms that I get to speak on, the number of rooms that I get to walk into still feels surreal.
Yeah.
But then you get to be assured by remembering that, but God says, I knew you before you were formed.
Sure.
So he ordained this path. I'm literally just following a trail that
Even
he has
goes
carved
before
out.
us,
Oh,
yeah.
always.
Yeah.
And that is the most assuring thing. But imposter syndrome is a real thing, guys. Like
Me, like, yeah.
that's why we keep trying to better ourselves so much, because you always just feel like I've got to do something more to add on to what I have. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for women that wanna partake in the industry, like that is male dominated?
Yeah. Look, do it. Don't do it because you want to get into an industry that's male dominated. I find that a lot of people will say now, I want to branch into this because I want to sort of reduce the male centeredness or the main prominence in a sector. I don't think it's a good enough reason to go into a field. Go into it because you love it, because you've got a passion for an aspect of it, and because you believe that you've got considerable contributions to make to that particular sector. To do it for the right reasons, but also start early. I'm proud of you because I remember when you and I first started speaking, you had interviewed Kujo Mamabur.
Yeah.
And I said to him, who is this? I saw this diamond in the rough.
I don't forget.
No. But I'm proud because you, and even I'm sure Luena, you can see as you grow that, no, but I'm improving so much when you compare to when you started.
Definitely.
So you're not going to wake up and just go and work at the national office of SANTACO. You're not going to just wake up and go work for the public broadcaster. It doesn't work like that. I mean, when I started by creating a campus TV stations at Turf. It never saw the light of day. I think we released 3 episodes.
Humble beginnings.
Humble beginnings. But it's from those platforms that you train yourself even to understand concepts such as rejection and concepts such as understanding that just because you believe in something doesn't mean everybody else is going to believe in it immediately.
Sure.
And I've learned that. I mean, when we started that channel on YouTube, I remember would go to people's rooms and say, please subscribe and watch. And they would subscribe and would leave and they would unsubscribe for whatever reason. Because also sometimes people, when you beg, they just think to themselves, okay, why?
Yeah.
But so my advice is don't do it because you want to dilute the male prominence of a sector. Do it because you believe you've got a contribution to make that's going to have a lasting impact. Yeah.
So the challenges in the tech industry, how are you handling them? Maybe like a situation.
Yeah. Look, I don't even know if I see them as challenges. I think I see them as opportunities. My father used to be a massive optimist. And so he would always say, in COVID-19, for instance, when times were tough economically.
Yeah.
And he would always say, remember that you're being plowed. You're like a seed that's being planted.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be that we plant today and tomorrow we can already see it mushrooming out of the soil. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I find it to sort of be the same even with the taxi industry. I mean, the taxi industry, it transports over 16 million South Africans every day. Yeah. And yet to this day, it's a conversation that I knew about when I was probably still in varsity, that the industry is not being subsidized by government.
Yeah.
And so these people have got to purchase vehicles, pay insurance, pay so many other things, pay for the driver and still have a commission. And it's impractical. So those challenges have seen varied changes in administration and they remain to be the same. And that concerns me. But when you've got people who are younger and a lot fresher in terms of perspective, I'm quite confident that some of these challenges will start to see the light of day. In my honors year, one of my majors was public policy. And it's coming so handy.
Okay.
Shout out to my lecturer, Dr. Khotatso Shai. I don't know, he's actually a professor now. Oh, I'm going to get in
Shout
trouble.
out. Ooh.
I'm going to get in so much trouble for downgrading him. But I think he prepared me for challenges such as these. There's also challenges of operating licenses. You've got government now impounding vehicles, saying that they don't have operating licenses. All the while, it's the same government that's supposed to be issuing these operating licenses. And they've got a backlog and they haven't been releasing them. That's concerning. But the challenges are many. The reality of how South Africans perceive the taxi industry, that's my biggest challenge, actually, in terms of my work. When I took over from that role, I remember the president saying, we're giving you the responsibility of changing how people see the industry. And I remember saying to them, well, you've done half the job because you've just given a woman a chance to speak for the industry. That is already like a big thing. But we recently did an initiative for Valentine's where we went to taxi ranks and we're giving people roses. And people were saying, this is different. It's not to say that I'm downscaling the other challenges of how some of our drivers treat people.
Sure.
So the road ahead is long, but these are massive opportunities because remember the kind of life you will lead when you retire from work. Knowing that in the term that I was spokesperson, people got to understand what SANTACO is and what it seeks to do. For me, that's like a big opportunity. So I don't really see them as challenges. Sure. They are opportunities to do better.
Wow.
Yeah.
For those that just got in here, I'm still with Rebecca Phala, the spokesperson of SANTACO, the first woman.
Youngest also.
The youngest, yes. So what are you currently reading?
I finished reading Mpumi Lidwaba's How Did We Get Here? And then I immediately read Rory Sang's book as well. And then just to get the year started, before work started, because I was trying to be a bit relaxed, then I read Rams Mabote's book as well. It's a work of fiction, beautiful writing ability. So sort of been reading, but I just started with my studies. So there's a book that's recently been written about the building up of Capitec. I'll give you the title, you add it on.
Okay.
And I've just started reading that book because I think it's a fascinating story of understanding problems, but also understanding how to solve a South African problem in a South African way.
Sure.
And I'm finding it to be very fascinating. That's the book I'm reading. But I'm reading it very slowly because I just started with my studies. And subsequently, work is busy. It's an election year for SANTACO. So SANTACO is going to elections. It consists of a lot of work. There's a lot that needs to be communicated out. And the usual everyday work that we do. Really.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the Big Sister conversation in 2018. Are we going to have more? Are we going to have another one?
Look, we must. I took a bit of a break because I think I was very young when I did the Big Sister conversation. Sure. Very, very young. But it had a massive impact. Some of the alumni of the program are your good friends. Malishilana Poshoko, Shibu M. They're doing incredible work. Chofacho as well. She does incredible clothing. And many others.
Yeah.
It will definitely come back. This year, I've just managed to secure a sponsorship. So I'm passionate about public speaking. I'm passionate about reading. I'm passionate about debating because I think that they build one to be a phenomenal leader in society. So definitely in 2025, we're doing a public speaking competition and we're doing it in Limpopo. There's no other place. We're doing it in Limpopo, public speaking, debating partnership competition. And then we'll also do a book drive to give books to learners, especially who are in especially rural areas. And books both in English and Lika Spade. Because we need not to overly fascinate ourselves with wanting to be proficient in the Queen's language and disregard our own languages. I think it would be a massive disservice.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that you can come and be one of the judges. In fact, you are coming.
Okay, guys, you heard that. I might as well put on sponsorship, and offer my,
We're done. It's there.
Sealed.
It's there. So please stay tuned. We will give you the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you think your roots have shaped your perspective and worldview? I know you're rooted.
Oh, I
can
am.
tell. I can tell.
Oh, I am. I know myself like from
Yeah.
I can draw you the organogram of my family from like 3 generations before I was born. My parents had an opportunity to have my siblings and I school in Gauteng for the reality of or the promise of a better future because you would have done Afrikaans, first language, English, second language, and the works. My father would always say, I don't want children who are going to go to a funeral and they can't read the obituary that's written Kasipedi. And so every day without fail, he would say to us, from my brother all the way to me, wena ulisiba, wena unkolo, wena umkhayethi, wena umalusi, wena Mmatšhikhidi.
Yeah.
That's me. And that's why of late, whilst back in the day I would have said, my name is Rebecca Phala.
Yeah.
Now I'm clear to say, I can now Mmatšhikhidi Rebecca Phala.
Yeah, yeah.
But some of the teachings from my family have always been of respect and love. Although sometimes now as I grow, I feel like it's bordering on me not being able to have proper boundaries. But we'll have that conversation some other time because I'm just so loving of everyone.
Sure.
And so welcoming. But every single person that I encounter is a relative to me. A fellow African especially. Oh, I love my fellow Africans. I find that it has helped me in this male-dominated industry, and that's why it's not so hectic for me. Sure. Because I don't go in and I'm like, oh yeah, but I am like, maybe I speak better than you, or I studied much more than you did, so as a result, I'm better. No, I respect everyone equally and for the roles and contributions that they make to society. So I think that the manner in which I was brought up has made me a very tolerable person to be around. And as a result of that, it has, and I believe it will continue to expose me to incredible opportunities. Yeah.
So are there any new habits, practices that we're putting in 2025?
Oh, yes. I don't know if it's like a new habit because I think we all sort of go back and forth with it.
Yeah.
The idea of leading a healthy life. So the kind of life that I'm leading does not allow, if you're not very conscious of it, you could run the risk of leading the most unhealthy life because you start your day from 4:00 by doing media interviews, and then you must shower quickly, drive to the office, sometimes drive to a taxi rank, sometimes drive to a TV interview, whatever the case may be. Sometimes travel outside of the province or even outside of the country.
Yeah.
So you don't always get enough time to make time for gym, make time for cooking a proper meal. I can't remember the last time I ever made a meal for myself.
Hectic.
So the new habit that I'm drawing up for myself is to eating healthy and leading a healthy life because I pray, my biggest prayer is always good health.
Yeah.
Good health is
I
very
think it's
important.
even John 3:12, something like that.
Yeah.
I pray that you may be prosperous and be in good health.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
it's well aligned.
Oh, absolutely. Because how are you prosperous if you're not in good health?
Ooh, yeah.
And remember, you are what you eat. That famous saying.
Sure.
So that's a new habit that I'm sort of resuscitating. I hope it goes well. Yeah.
So what is your go-to song? I would say code, but I want a song. Because songs speak to us.
Umuhawa Modimo. And it doesn't matter who sings it, but I love it the most when it's my mother that sings it. My mother has got the most beautiful singing voice. I used to think that I could sing. I don't know if I still think so. Umuhawa Modimo. I think that song encapsulates my life story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at how I started and how I've made it this far, it's literally just God's grace. Yeah.
So we've been here and we can talk the whole day.
Oh, we can.
Because we're sisters and we click.
Can.
But I thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
In conclusion, talk to my audience, like, few words.
Yeah.
Fellow Africans.
Fellow Africans. I
Yes.
love that it's like this continental outlook.
Yeah.
I love what President Cyril Ramaphosa recently said in light of what's been happening at the DRC.
Sure.
He said that we are not going to be bullied. And I believe that every South African, it doesn't matter whether you believe in politics or not, you can never allow yourself to be bullied out of anything. But it's also very important at this time as Africans that we hold each other. We're going to need each other now more than ever. We've been talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area for the longest time. It's not coming to a reality. So as Africans, let's love each other. And we are all that we have. And let's not allow anyone to bully us from that perspective. But even as an individual,
Sure.
in everything that you pursue, never allow anybody to bully you. It's all love.
Sweet, sweet. And this is for you. A mini token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you. You're so
much.
sweet. Creating a better
Africa.
with Cabello Lioness.
The one and only. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share the link to your friends. Tell them to subscribe as well. See you in the next episode. Mwah. Blue kisses. Thank you.